Welcome back to the Dementia Collective, a podcast where we explore moving stories, fresh ideas, and talk with impactful people shaping the future of dementia care. If you're new here, I'm Andrew Karesa, a caregiver, a researcher, founder of BlueBell Village. I created this space because, like many, I've lived the dementia journey firsthand. I know what it's like to feel lost, overwhelmed, and alone. But I also know that strength can come from connection and working in community to support the ones that we love. Each episode, we dive into the people, tools, and innovations that are helping caregivers find their footing and their voice. Our mission? To make dementia care more personal, more connected. As you've heard me say before, every caregiver deserves to feel seen, heard, and supported. Today, I'm excited for our guest. We have Stephanie Fauquier joining us. Stephanie is a strategic leader, endurance athlete, and founder of Race with Steph, a national movement raising awareness and over $1 million for the Alzheimer's research through triathlons and community engagement. In 2021, Steph's mom, Dr. Robin McLeod, a renowned surgeon and Order of Canada recipient, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Determined to take action, Steph set out on a 16-week journey to complete one triathlon in each Canadian province, ultimately raising $1 million for Alzheimer's research. Family went on to establish the Dr. Robin McLeod Research Scholarship at the University of Toronto TANS Centre, which now funds graduate students in neurodegenerative disease research in perpetuity. By day, Steph serves as Director of Strategy at TELUS Health, advising executive leadership on growth, innovation, and digital health transformation. But her most personal mission began after her mother's diagnosis, channeling her love of sport and storytelling to inspire action and hope. Named one of Toronto's most influential women in sports and most inspiring women in 2023, Stephanie is redefining what it means to turn personal purpose into powerful impact. Her journey blends athletic grit, strategic vision, and heartfelt leadership. A story of resilience, reinvention, and making a difference one race at a time. Don't say, Stephanie, welcome to the Dementia Collective.
Thanks, Andrew. It's so good to be, especially to talk about a topic that I really love and obviously really care about.
I think we have a lot of overlaps for the things that we love and want to talk about. So there's lots of stuff we can talk about.
Yeah, I know that you're also a fellow triathlete, so
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So before we talk about the Race with Steph, can we just get to know a little bit about you? What's your background? So you, in the bio, we talked about being an endurance athlete. We talked about growing up playing sports. Can you talk about kind of your path growing up?
Yeah, growing up, I'm so lucky. I did all kinds of sports, played competitive level sports, and badminton and horseback riding and basketball and all kinds of different sports. My mom really encouraged us to be really well-rounded and have diverse interests. So not only sports, but arts and, sort of overall recreation. And yeah, when my mom was diagnosed, it kind of was a thought of like, how can I combine these two things? And I'm lucky, drawing on this past of athletic interests.
And so when you were thinking about doing it, what was kind of an instigation? Was it the idea of, I want to do something to raise awareness? I want to do something to raise money. Like, how did you come about it?
Yeah. So when my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, it was probably like one of the worst times in my life, right? Not to be like hyperbolic about it, but it was really unexpected. My mom, as you noted, like she was an Order of Canada recipient. She, had a really prolific career. I would have thought that she would have been just like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just in terms of like her life, her career output, like all of it. And so it was really very sudden for us. And when she was diagnosed, it was incredibly devastating. She is my role model, and hopefully, we can talk more about her, but an absolutely incredible woman, leader, and Canadian. And I don't really know what the immediate link was, but I thought this is something that we need to talk about. We don't talk enough about Alzheimer's disease. We're not talking about the tsunami of Alzheimer's neurodegenerative disease. I'm kind of saying like the Twisted Sisters, ALS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. And I knew that if my mom, who was such an accomplished woman, felt embarrassed to think about other people who may be feeling in a similar way, and triathlon felt like the appropriate thing to do just given that it's hard, it's gritty, there's parts to it. And I felt like it would be a great thing to race across the country, unite Canadians, and have a conversation. And so it just, kind of started from there, being something I could do.
So you have a unique journey, degrees in policy design. How does that impact you today and your kind of work
My work at TELUS, or just in everything that I'm doing?
in TELUS Health with with Steph?
Yeah. Um, I think, the piece for me, I have always been really interested. I'm a really interested and curious person. And I think everything that I do is because I'm curious and I'm a broad thinker. And I think that I pull that curiosity through everything that I'm doing. I like to know, and I like to ask questions, and I like to figure things out. And I think all of my experiences together have been able to get me to this point. And I think that it's curiosity and a growth oriented mindset. I think a lot of people underestimate the impact they can have by just being curious, learning, seeing people around them. And so I guess that's like what I would credit my success to, is discipline and curiosity.
When you think about kind of the journey before your mom was diagnosed, were you considering triathlons, endurance races, and things like that at that point?
Yeah. So I have always played sports. I ran cross country in university, and I had already done 10 triathlons before this. It was something that I was doing before COVID and through my 20s. And then I picked it up again to do race with Steph. And it's something that I continue to do now. It was just, it was something I had done before, and I thought it was like worthy of this cause.
So you did 10 provinces and 10 races. I assume the territories, it was few and far between to find a triathlon in some of those, eh?
It was. But my intention was, if I could have done it, I would have happily done the territories. It didn't work. I mean, maybe that's like round two. We go back and we do the territories. But yeah, we did it over 16 weeks. It was an amazing experience. My dad came to all 16 with me, or 16, 10. Wow, now I'm playing the number. No, to all 10 races. It was really important to me to have him there. It's the caregiving, and I wanted him to have an adventure. I was also really proud that my mom was at 7 of those races. I thought it was really important for her to be there. And I can tell you, and we should probably chat about that, but traveling with someone who has Alzheimer's is really difficult and taxing. But that was part of it. It was to experience, raise awareness for people in those communities, but then also have an experience, a family memory, celebrate my dad as caregiver, and also have this opportunity for my mom. The other thing that's sort of interesting about it is that was our last family trip, really. Unfortunately, my mom did pass away last year in February, and Race with Steph was our last kind of great Canadian adventure that we had together.
I'm
Um,
sorry to hear that.
yeah, thank you. So there's so many amazing, there's so much in there of Race with Steph, and I'm grateful for it.
So how did you find the process of traveling with your mother? Because I know when I travel to do races, and I've got kids and stuff, and it's more complicated than me just going to this place and doing the race. So how do you find the process of navigating, especially knowing that you have to probably keep her comfortable and kind of establish where we're going, what we're doing, while still trying to mentally prepare for it? So what is that process like?
Yeah, this is where I think, whether or not you're doing a triathlon, or whatever type of carrying that you're doing, I think for me, the success we had at these races, um, was that everything was really, we had a structure and a schedule of how we traveled. So I actually worked all the way through. So I would work I worked Monday to Thursday at TELUS. And then sometimes we'd fly out on Friday night, or sorry, like Thursday, Friday, get there. And so we had a really established process. And so knowing, when we would land, when I would have to have my bike built. So one of the things for me is, in Race with Steph, it was really important to me to really compete in every province. And the purpose of that was, we were showing up to do this, and it wasn't just participation, it was to compete and really do this and immerse ourselves. So my bike had to be rebuilt, and I had to go through a safety check. And so by having a very fixed schedule of structure, it made it easy and predictable, so that when traveling with my mom and she might have been upset or something might come up, there was a structure that we could kind of follow. And then where needed, we could adapt. And I think that that was really helpful. And I even think that was kind of helpful like throughout my mom's kind of care, if you could have some sort of structure and stability. I think that really helped us a lot.
And so, of the seven, which ones did she not do? Did she not go to?
She did not go to Saskatchewan, Newfoundland, and so the ones that she was in BC, Alberta. Alberta was a really special race. My mom is originally from Alberta, from Spruce Grove. So
Okay.
that was a really exciting, celebrating, race for us. She was not in Saskatchewan with me, and she was not in Manitoba, and she did not go to Newfoundland, but she was there for Ontario, Quebec, Halifax, Prince Edward Island, and New Brunswick. And I kind of like jumped.
It was Great White North you did, right?
I did Great White North.
Which is perfect. It lands right in the Parkland County where she's from.
Exactly. So it was really special. Growing up, we have a family cottage on Lake Wapnum, and it was special to, to have a few days with family. And I think it was my second or third race. I think it was my third race, sorry. And it was really special to come out to Alberta, see friends and family. I got a ton of support. And then, the big race that we finished in was Ontario, my home province. There's a really great photo that I love, and it is this one where I'm coming around the corner in that parking lot, and I can see my mom at the finish line, and we've got this great one of me, and like we're holding hands like this, and it's a really special photo for me.
So going back to Alberta, did you find that because your mom grew up there, it was easier for her to travel there and to get around, especially considering there's family at the lake and stuff that way?
It was great. That was an easier race for us, but I think through a race with Steph, like travel was definitely harder with my mom there, but there's like no realm that I would not have taken her to these races. It was really important to me that she came with us. She did come with us for a couple of races, just because of logistics and like something. But it was really important to have her at these races, and so we made it work. But Alberta was just, she went to the University of Alberta, has so many amazing friends. Her sister's still there, my cousins are there, and that was probably a special race for her.
Yeah, I can only imagine what it would feel like for her to really come back home and see what you're doing and feel the impact of what you're doing and to really share that with the family. So a lot of people don't really travel with their loved one, especially flying. So can you talk about the process, maybe some advice or tips for folks on how to navigate that journey?
Yeah, I mean, there's so one of the things that was helpful. So my mom also had aphasia. So aphasia for my mom came actually earliest, and we saw it as like mild cognitive impairment. And so my mom's aphasia made it so that it was also difficult for her to retrieve words. And so that was actually quite frustrating early on when her cognition declined, and her sort of detection to death was 3 years. And with her aphasia, it made it that she couldn't always communicate. And so early on, we actually, as a suggestion from the Aphasia Institute, there's a letter that you can get that basically says, I have the medical doctor, a medical note. And it basically says like, I have aphasia, I have difficulty with, retrieving words, like this person is my delegate. And I think that's a really helpful thing early on. My mom did not like that, but her decline was so rapid that we didn't really stay in that window of sort of semi-loose, like being lucid. But I think that that's a really helpful thing, is to have some of these documents as you're traveling, because if my mom were pulled over, say, in security, it meant that my dad could function as her delegate. And so I think that, if you do want to travel, you should, 100% you should travel with your loved one. It does require more planning, but there are tools and resources, and like the Alzheimer Society and all of these groups have all these resources. So number one, like think about that as the process of going to the airport. But then the second thing I would say about traveling is there are things that you can do that make and can remind the person who has Alzheimer's of what home is like. And I think that you have to anticipate that they're going to have maybe some extra confusion, or they're not going to know where they are. And I think that there's sort of safeties that you can have in place, but traveling with them is still so magical, and you want to make those memories. And so I would say it's the process, and it's just being disciplined about making sure that you have a schedule or a structure or, some continuity for the person. But those would be kind of my thoughts on it.
And I'm sure having your dad there as another face and the family caregiver really was helpful for her.
Yeah, it was interesting though at times that my mom didn't recognize my dad's face. So even though he was her primary caregiver, there were times that she didn't always recognize him.
Did she always recognize your face?
She did. I believe she did. There was never any indication, but there were times that she didn't always recognize my dad. And that was really interesting. And we don't really know why, but there were just times she didn't always recognize him.
Interesting. I wonder if in her mind she was reconnecting what he looked like all those years back. Interesting.
Maybe that was her subtle way of being like, you're not as good looking anymore. Yeah, my dad's so good looking, so no, that's not it. But it was always like it was a pretty interesting thing throughout her decline of just of knowing or not knowing my dad at times. Like we remember a time like my mom, would be like, there's a man in the house. And then we said,
And so her decline, you said, was 3 years from diagnosis to death. Was it a long pre-diagnosis where you started seeing some indicators in advance?
I would say what's really interesting is my mom with this aphasia. So because she was so accomplished and so busy in her work, you might be talking to her but you would know that she'd be thinking about 8 other things. She was just so accomplished and able to juggle so many balls. And so if she struggled down a word, and it wasn't very long, but if you struggle on a word, you'd think like, oh, she's just thinking about something. And then during COVID, my dad actually had a bit of a health incident. And it was really interesting because it startled my mom I think he was her grounding. And then that's when we actually started to see that there was this rapid decline. And so, like I said, she was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment first, and then her progression into Alzheimer's was very quick. And so really in those 3 years from 20, her death in February 6th, 2024, was rapid. Her decline was very rapid.
What was life like for her before her diagnosis? So she was a surgeon. Was she still practicing pre-diagnosis?
No, she was at Cancer Care Ontario, and she was leading clinical programs and quality initiatives. And, she was still president of the American Surgical Association. And that's what I mean is that she was functioning at a very high level. And then there was, something that was so out of her control. Like my dad had he had cancer and had to go through some treatment. And that was a very jarring moment. And then a lot of this stuff became evident. And so we really didn't have, so some families have, an incident and then it might go on maybe for 12 plus years. For us, it was very rapid. And there wasn't really much before. So we're not maybe a typical case study.
Would you say that there were any values or lessons that your mother imparted on you early on that kind of led for you to take on this legacy from her?
Yes, I think that I am incredibly lucky. I have the most amazing mom, and I think lots of people say that, but I truly believe that my mom was exceptional as a parent, as a friend, as a surgeon, as an educator. So she instilled in both me and I have an older sister, Claire, a real sense of a moral compass, very high standards and expectations. She was incredibly loving. So when you say that, there's also a counter to it that she was incredibly loving and supportive. And I just have so much respect for her that I just felt how could I not do something for her and not do something for Alzheimer's disease, because it stripped her of her identity. She was a powerhouse in her intellectual capabilities, and this disease just robs people of that. And so I wanted to do something about it. And I'm very proud of the money that we raised. We raised, nearly $1 million, and we now have a graduate student scholarship at the University of Toronto TAN Center at the Terry Faculty of Medicine, and we're forever funding graduate students. Our whole idea is get in early and fund neurodegenerative disease research. We chose to be broad because there are, it's very clear that discoveries in either ALS or Parkinson's can have a material impact in Alzheimer's. And, I just wanted to do that. And my mom also had a very prolific career outside of her surgery that was on her emphasis on research. And it felt like a really fitting piece to have a legacy for her that she would forever be in her name, contributing to amazing graduate students. And we're actually really excited. Our first recipient actually was part of a groundbreaking study on Puron disease. And Puron disease is not an Alzheimer's, but it affects your brain in a similar way that you can mimic and hopefully do studies for Alzheimer's disease. And we were, our grad students was part of that study. So we're already starting to see the effects of our donations and our scholarship.
That's remarkable for 2 years after the last race to now have the research coming to fruition and driving an impact. That's a testament to your mother's legacy.
It is. I mean, but one thing that's important to me in this is, of course, I'm doing this for my mom, but the whole reason and naming behind Race with Steph was say race with Steph for my mom, or race with Steph for my grandma, or for my aunt, right? Like, we're doing this together as a community because so many people will be affected by Alzheimer's disease. And so, I feel like these are contributions for everyone, because my hope is that other families don't have to go through this. At the time, I was 35 when my mom died, and she was 72 when she died. Like, she's too young. I feel too young to have lost my mom. So I'm just hopeful that our contributions make it so other families don't have to go through this.
So can we talk about your mom for a minute? She's obviously so impactful and very credentialed person. Can we kind of talk about her a little bit, kind of understand who she was in addition to your mom? So she was a surgeon, Order of Canada. I would assume that has to do with her work being a knowledge expert in surgery.
Yes, she was really interesting. Like, her undergraduate degree, she got from the University of Alberta, and then she did her general surgery at the University of Toronto. And then she did colorectal surgery at the Cleveland Clinic, as well as training in clinical epidemiology at McMaster University. And then she went on to join the faculty at the University of Toronto. But, she was also a fellow of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada. She was a fellow of the American College of Surgeons and a fellow ad hominem of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. She was also a diplomat of the American Board of Surgery and the American Board of Colorectal Surgery. And then she held a ton of fellowships around the world. I mean, like, she was incredibly credentialed and qualified. So it's why I say we all believed, and I think many in the medical community would have thought, she would be very similar to like a Ruth Bader Ginsburg, working till the end, like, loved her work, but that wasn't the way.
Yeah. She's still leaving a legacy, even though she's not here. I mean, based on what you're saying, that sounds busy. There must have not been a lot of downtime. And even probably when there was downtime, there's still probably a lot happening in the mind, a lot of processing, a lot of thinking.
Yeah, a lot of thinking, a lot of doing. I think, though, she was able to accomplish a lot because she was one of those people, when she gave you her time or attention, she was very much a quality versus quantity. Like, she was away a lot. She was the president of many surgical associations and just, did a ton of research on all of this stuff. But when she was home, she made lunches for me and my sister every day, a homemade lunch. She made all of our Halloween costumes, right? Like, I feel like everything that she did, she was so giving to both of us. And she was amazing for that. Like, even at the hospital, like, we always kind of joked and said at Christmas that she would fire up the cookie factory, and she probably made like 2,000 cookies and gave them to all of the different staff and faculty and groups within the hospital. And she would always host out of town surgeons at our house, and we had Christmas parties, and she was sort of the ultimate host. Always so welcoming, the more the merrier. I can tell you that we had tons of surgeons and residents that came to our Christmas dinners, and yeah, she did it all.
That sounds very busy, but the Order of Canada makes sense considering the compassion that I'm hearing and the generosity that she's having with her time and knowledge. What do you remember most about her that has inspired you?
I think that this is what I take, is that she was incredibly humble. So for all of her accomplishments, you would never know because she would never talk about herself. And I think it's so amazing because most people talk all about themselves and she never did. So I think a lot about that. I think also about her bedside manner. I can remember times if we were on vacation and something happened, she would never run in and say like, I'm here, I'm a physician. She would help anyone and everyone. And she did it in the most sort of modest and humble way. But she was really a like an amazing leader. And you would see this in terms of both being a surgeon or, a female surgeon, as a parent, as a mom. She really had a very strong moral and ethical code, right? Like she had a really, really high standards and expectations, but she was incredibly giving in terms of like her teaching and her time. But she was like also very clear, like if she did not like something, like didn't like something that you were doing. And I think about that a lot, that you can be successful and you can do all of these things with this kind of quiet confidence. And it's not about you, that there are like ways that you can lead and be a leader and inspire other people. And it doesn't have to be loud. And I think about that. I think about her judgment. I think about her humor. She was funny, very funny. So I don't know. Maybe that's not a great answer to your question, but those are kind of the things that I think about across the, continuums of her as a person.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair answer. One thing I read about your mom earlier was that with her students, she was known for being very tough, but very fair. And I think that's such a tough balance to walk. And if you can do it well, and obviously the people were talking about this on the internet about her being able to navigate that. So I think that's a testament to the way she approached supporting others.
Yes. Yes, she was definitely very tough but fair. I can think of so many times in my childhood of being like, guess what, mom, I did this thing. And she might say, great job. Or if I said like, I can't believe this happened. And, she would take them like, well, what was your role in it? And you think like, can you just take my side? And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Like there are so many isms, I feel like one of them, I'm an adult now. And I think anytime I do something on a weeknight, I'm like, I can't do that. It's a weeknight. Like she would always say, like, you can't like have a sleepover on a weeknight or you can't do something. So there's like all these like funny things, about her. But yeah, she was definitely tough, but very fair. Very, very fair.
Did your mom ever do triathlons or marathons? No.
No, imagine we were just like a mother-daughter duo out there. No, she did not. She came to my triathlons and like was very supportive of sports. But as a family, every year or like we would go away somewhere warm. And the thing that my mom loved the most was when we would play family tennis. So the four of us would play doubles tennis, and that's kind of our family sport. And we would always joke that my mom was Chrissy Everett on the court in style. And so that was our family sport.
As long as you have something that keeps you moving and gets you
Yeah.
exercise, right?
I mean, the thing is, like, my mom was always really fit and very active because she took the stairs in the hospital. So her office was on the fourth floor, and I think her maybe surgery was on the 14th floor or something. And in between would be patient floors, and so all day she was just kind of going up and down the stairs. So she was always very fit. And I think that would be the thing that she would say. And that she would say to both me and my sister now is, no one can have everything, but if you focus on the things that you need to do, like you can get them done and be practical in it. And, she ate well and was healthy and, you had functional exercise. So like she did all the things. She strengthened her mind, ate well, slept well. She, did not drink alcohol, didn't drink coffee, like she did the things.
Yeah. And so your mom has almost all of the things they say. If you do these things, your likelihood or having a dementia will be lower. If you don't read, then you have a higher activity or higher likelihood of it. If you don't exercise, a higher likelihood. There's all these factors, but it seems like your mother was doing I would say, the best choice on all of these things, but still developed Alzheimer's. So how did that reshape your understanding of the disease and what we think we know about risk or navigation of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could think that I would be cynical about it. Uh, and sure, when my mom first said to me, perhaps I thought like this is incredibly unfair, but there's no guarantees in life. For me, I think there's almost like two parts. One, I think you don't really know what's going to come in life, right? Like you can plan and you can be fit and you can do all of these things. And unfortunately, you have to deal with the cards that you're dealt. And I think how I feel in my own life now, I feel more of a sense that I want to like live bold and brave and shoot for really big goals and dreams. And you'll see that with Race with Steph and just other things. So I think it's made me want to be a bit more present and enjoy life. I think from the other side of the environmental factors that you're alluding to, I think that it is still really important to eat well, to exercise, to stay socially engaged, to have a community around you. You know, perhaps you do develop some cognitive impairment, but I would bet that if you are healthy, you are eating a balanced diet, you have friends, you have a community, that those things would likely, be mild. And so I'm not cynical about those environmental factors. I believe in them, but I believe in them as just good principles for aging well. And unfortunately, in this case, my mom was just unlucky. But when I look at the quality of her life, she achieved so much. She had a great life and did all of these things. So I don't know. I'm not cynical. I'm not cynical at all about it. I think they're just like good things to live by.
It's interesting because when I think about my journey with my grandmother through Alzheimer's, as much as looking back, I wish my grandmother's still here today. It's been like a year and a half since my grandma passed away. I am grateful though that the journey happened because I spent more time with my grandmother for those 5-ish years than I had since I was a kid. We were there all the time with her, spending time with her to the point that she couldn't remember some people, my family's names, but she knew my kids' names because we were there that often. And so I think we can look at these things as being a problem. Why does this happen to me or my loved one? But ultimately, looking at it on the positive of, it's not great, but this is my opportunity to really spend this time with them, further these relationships and support them the way they need. I think that's the important way of approaching these things.
I think you've also had to navigate it and the experiences of that loss and that, how it feels. It's tough.
Yeah, all those sort of things, unfortunately, are. So, how did you navigate the emotional highs and lows of the races, knowing that your mom was the motivation? Did that help you get through it?
That's a great question. I think that I am just like I will achieve it early on, actually, when when I started Race with Steph. So when I did it, I had 16, keep saying 16 weeks, but I did 10 triathlons. The first one was a half Ironman. And for people that don't know triathlon, it is you swim, you bike, and you run. In this case, for a half Ironman, it was a 1.9 kilometer swim, an 80-kilometer bike, and a half marathon. And I actually broke my big toe during the swim. When I was running out of the water, I stubbed it in the chute going up to my bike. And I didn't actually realize that I had broken it. I thought I just chipped my toenail. And, my thought was, I can either cry and transition or, get on with it. And obviously, I decided to get on with it. And I realized when I finished, I thought, wow, this hurts a little bit more than I thought. And I had broken my big toe. And that, I had 9 more races to go. My big toe was broken on my left foot. And I was really lucky. I had 3 weeks and then it recovered completely. And then I was back racing 4 weeks later, no problem. And it didn't affect anything. And I would say that, my motivation was that I was going to complete this because of respect to my mom, to the cause, to, everything that we were doing. And I think, that's something I credit her. It's just determination and perseverance.
Being able to recover on that broken toe is impressive. I mean, doing how many months between the first and your last one?
I started at the end of May and I finished at the beginning of September.
Okay, so what, 4 months? So something like
Three
that?
and a half.
3.5? Yeah, so you're doing pretty good pace. And for folks that have never done it, to compound that many races in that short of a time is taxing on the body, right? So it's, especially with a broken toe, like it's
Yeah.
a lot.
I did, so in the course of Race with Steph, I did over 500 kilometers of racing. That's just racing. And I had a stretch actually when I went, originally I was supposed to go to New Brunswick after, after British Columbia, but because of breaking my toe, I ended up switching that race. I still went to New Brunswick and cheered on all of these women. I think they thought it was crazy. They're like, "What? You came all the way from Ontario to this race?" But I went to see it. I watched, cheered them on. It was fantastic. It was actually it actually felt very perfect for what I was doing, and was a women's only, get women into the sport race. And it was so amazing to see all of these women. I think that's the thing as women age, given Alzheimer's is predominantly affects women for various reasons. It was amazing to see all of these first time women trying and accomplishing triathlon. And so I was so happy to be there, so happy to see these women and cheer them on. And then it meant that because of moving a race, I ended up going to, I think I then raced in Halifax. And then I went Halifax, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, I think, in one other race. And I actually ended up having a race schedule where I raced back-to-back weekends, like for those next 4 races. And I think my shortest turnaround between races was 5 days.
Wild. I tried doing the Edmonton Marathon. I was going to do a triathlon 5 days later. And it was the only time did not start. I could not get the body moving well enough to do the race. So I can only imagine what it was like to have 5 days between them for you.
I'm going to just say, one fun anecdote is through Race with Steph, I also had some amazing performances. I had 3 podiums, a couple age group wins. And so that final one, that 5th race, I think was in Manitoba. It was nice. I finished with a podium finish. So
For age group, you podiumed? Or for
no,
overall?
no, I had my podium for overall wins in the women's triathlon.
Wow. That's
Right.
impressive.
Right. I was a 3rd place and I had 2 second place finishes. But yeah, they were overall for women.
That's impressive still. That's great. And I think it probably meant so much to have your mom see you there on the podium as a visual symbol, right?
Yes. It was awesome. It was incredible. So fun. There was one race in New Brunswick when I was on the podium and when I finished, and I saw her run across and came to give me a big hug. You know what? I would take those hugs any day now. I would take any. So yeah, it was special.
Did she ever, because some triathlons, they let your loved one kind of do the last, whatever, 20 meters or whatever it is before the carpet starts. Did you have the opportunity to run with her on the last little closing bit across the finish line?
You know what? I didn't do that. I don't know if I really consciously thought of it or I impacted it. I didn't. I guess maybe I didn't really think about it. I think for some people with Alzheimer's, their foot speed slows down, and I didn't want there to be any accident. So we didn't think about it. We have lots of great photos like at the finish line, once I've come through and pictures and very excited about it. But we didn't do it, and like maybe that would have been fun. Yeah, it would have been a fun thing, but I didn't do it, unfortunately.
Nonetheless, you still have the photos and stuff of like the one of you and your mom standing at the Great White North finish is a great photo of showing the impact and the happiness, right?
Exactly. I should have brought it, so I could have shown people, but I raced in a really special triathlon suit. So a lot of people ask, like, what do you wear in these races? And so you wear one outfit that you swim, bike, and run in. And it was important to me that people not only, really I want people to know what we were doing, and it was less about me and it was more about, awareness building. And so I raced in a custom suit and it was awesome. It said race with Steph. And then the tie-dye of the suit was actually embedded with 10 provincial icons. So it wasn't the common icon. It was what was iconic for the province. And so when you looked really close at my suit, you would see that it was embedded with the DNA of Canada. But what was really special is on the inside of my suit, I had 2 pictures, and one was a picture of me and my mom together when I was really young. And I think we look really quite alike. And then the other was her Order of Canada. And it was nice that she was part of my suit and, part of there was a little part of her with me as I was racing. So
Did people ever on the run talk to you about it, or post run say, what's the deal with Race with Steph?
yes. So it's funny. The first race, I think, not as many people knew. Well, people did know about us. Like, one thing that was amazing was Canadians who rallied behind us. And we ended up getting a lot of attention for this. And, people, if they're interested, you can see various articles that were written across the country. So we did get a lot of interest. And what was interesting in the first race, people really didn't know. And they'd be like, am I racing with Steph? Like kind of as a joke. And then as we moved across the country, more and more people knew what we were doing. People would seek us out at races, and we would always have our sweatshirts on that would say race with Steph. We had hats, and people seemed to always seek us out and they would hear what we were doing. And that was really exciting. And that was actually one of the reasons that it was so nice to have my dad there. And it was important to me that he was able to live his caregiver story and share. And, so there's instances of him being interviewed and sharing his experiences. But yeah, lots of people really interested. A lot of people followed along with what we were doing. A lot of people shared their own personal experiences with Alzheimer's. And that was the whole point. The money and having an impact on research personally was just very important because of my mom's legacy. But the real objective was to get people talking about Alzheimer's disease or dementias. And I think we succeeded that way. Our campaign was really visible. And that was amazing. It didn't have to be about me. It was, but it really wasn't about me.
I love to see the conversations that come in these medium. Like when I do triathlons, we have a custom tri suit as well. And on the back, I basically have a call out for, if you want to talk about changing the way dementia is cared for, talk to me. And people reach out and want to talk about it. I think that's the way we can continue to break down this narrative, especially in the endurance sport world. We all kind of, with me not say it, but we all kind of think that we're near indestructible, right? We can do these things and keep going. But we need to start thinking through these things. And if it's not for us, it's for our loved one. How do we support them and break that stigma?
Breaking the stigma, I think, is such an important thing, right? I mean, I'm sure when you're racing and when people talk to you, lots of people want to talk about their experience. And I think the hardest thing with a brain disease or, neurodegenerative disease is that at first there's this kind of spectrum of cognition, right? Where the person who has it, their level of awareness makes it a little bit hard because they're embarrassed and they don't want to talk about it. And then once you kind of flip over, then you're thinking like, what are the resources? What are the supports? And then you're into caregiving in a very different way. And so I think having conversations and having support, because every single case of Alzheimer's or dementia is different in some way, shape, or form of how someone acts, behaves, progresses. And I think the more that we can talk about it, the more that we reduce stigmas. And I think you could even say that maybe a little bit more broadly that we're talking about dementias and Alzheimer's, but you could say the same about mental health in general. It's so invisible. But it has such an impact on the person.
Yeah, we had on the podcast a while ago, we had a guy named Pete Hill, and he has a radio show on UK public health radio called The D Word, and he speaks to folks all around the world talking about breaking the stigma of dementia, because in his clinical practice with the Alzheimer's Society, it was kind of a stigma that no one could talk about. This is within programs and stuff at the Alzheimer's Society. They wouldn't use the word. And he's like, we need to use the word to break down the negative connotations of the word. Let's not make it terrible.
It's interesting. People are terrified of the word. I mean, it's an early disease. There's no way around it. I think if you can support people through it, as best as you can. I mean, hopefully that's some comfort.
And even though the person's going through it, in my case, it was still my grandmother, didn't really matter whether she had Alzheimer's or not. I was going to love and look after my grandmother nonetheless. And I mean, the same as I understand with you and your mom.
Exactly. You're going to support these people no matter what. So hopefully you have a positive conversation about it and make other people feel welcome.
Mm-hmm. So we're 2 years post completion of the first 10. What is next? Calgary 70.3, Vancouver T100. What are we thinking?
So funny. I'm obviously very, very, very much a proud Canadian. I love to travel to different races. You know, I think I'd be remiss not to say in all of this that I found after my mom died that I actually raced in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I was on a run to qualify to go to Kona, which is World Championship Ironman, and that's what I wanted to do. Chattanooga was a really terrible race. Like really and truly, it was a terrible race for me for many reasons. One, it was in May. My mom had died in February, and there was like 2,000-meter elevation gains. And it was 40 degrees without humidity, and it was just a hard race. And I think that race kind of made me think that I needed to just take a pause and I need to really think through how I felt about everything. The flip side of my mom's decline and then doing Race with Steph gave you lots of opportunities to kind of move through it and maybe not sit with your feelings. And I know that after I did it, I needed a little bit of time and I didn't post as much on Race with Steph and I kind of needed a moment from it. Just to sort of process how I felt about it and how did I feel about my mom dying. And I read a lot of books about like mother-daughter, grief and like things like that, right? Like the thing is she was my anchor and safety point. I'm a grown-up, obviously, and I've been successful and I'm like very capable. Losing your mom is a big thing, especially, when you're kind of like early, well, I guess I'm in my mid-30s. And so I took a little bit of time and I'm now like back at it and now, thinking about the next iteration of Race with Steph. And I have maybe bigger ambitions for Race with Steph and the impact that we will have. And I'm more excited and motivated to include more people in what we're doing. Triathlon will always be something for me and something that I compete in endurance sports. But the way that I view Race with Steph going forward is I want it to be as accessible for the most number of people to participate. That's really my dream is that we continue to fund and have an impact from a research perspective, but we provide people with an opportunity to get involved and learn and continue the conversation. So
if you had to think what that would look like in practice, what do you think that would look like?
Yeah, I think that triathlon, I would say on this, I think everyone should try a triathlon if you're able to access the gear. I think that there are some endurance challenges that we will get into and different ways that we will have people participate on teams. And the way that I want and think about Race with Steph is that there won't be barriers from a socioeconomic perspective. But it's so important to me to get women, Race with Steph is inclusive of men and women as men are equally affected by Alzheimer's and brain disease. But, in the case of Alzheimer's, more people with it are women. And it's really important to me to see women get out there and get active and stay social and stay engaged. And that's what you will continue to see from Race with Steph is opportunities for community building. I just think it's such an amazing thing. One of the things that I say to myself all the time is that many small steps lead to big outcomes. It is the consistency and discipline in every step that you take. Well, sometimes when I'm racing and I think, oh, I just want to stop. Like, you're in a half marathon and you think, oh, I'm sore. And I say to myself, never, like, you cannot stop, you cannot walk, but you can slow your running down. And it is that continuation of many small steps lead to big outcomes. And that's what I hope for Race with Steph is that we get women involved and they realize that many deliberate, intentional steps can either change the course or trajectory of their life from their health perspective, or this other side, because my mom made me feel so accomplished that women can look at these things that they've done and men as well and say, wow, I can't believe this year I did all of these things. And that's kind of what I hope to leave and inspire or empower people to feel. And maybe that's that, like, part of my mom and her magic.
So how has your experience with the race with Steph impacted your work at TELUS Health?
I think my work on Race with Steph is always top of mind in terms of, so the stuff I do at TELUS Health really focuses around, we have a lot of employee assistance programs. We've bought tons of businesses around the world. We're now a global company. And I really think a lot about it in the sense of the sandwich generation. These are, millennials and I think it's Gen X, who are now looking for parents who are aging, boomers who are aging, who have more cognitive decline, and yet they have young children. And, there are fewer resources and, just stresses. And so in my work, I think a lot about that. I think about the support that we provide, not just to our customers, but also just society wide, right? Like we have a lot of opportunity of what we can do. And I just really think a lot about aging in place. I think about, the boomer generation. I think about the sandwich generation. I think that there's a tsunami of events that are going to come that we are woefully underprepared for. I think, was it by 2030, it's like the number of Canadians with Alzheimer's disease is going to double to 1.5 million. My question is, where is accessible caregiving? Where are access to supports in the home? Like what about testing? And I'm speaking of like one part in the larger umbrella of dementia. So it's very timely and topical. How are people going to age? What does aging look like? So I think that there's really a nice sort of fusion across the things that I do for my professional work and the causes that I'm interested in.
We're definitely not prepared systematically. We had Dr. Sharon Anderson on a little while ago, and she was saying we can't build our way out of this problem. Instead of building facilities and institutions and hospitals, we need to figure out ways that we can equip caregivers. That's the only way we're going to have any chance of successfully moving forward. So from a First Nations lens, we actually see more men than women are projected to have it. So projection says more men than women. And we also see it's almost 3 times growth in First Nations. So we're not really equipped to support there either. So the whole system needs supports. The scholarship and the funding and supports that you're putting forward and your family is doing, I think, can really hopefully make a difference to temper what can and hopefully doesn't occur.
Yeah. I think though that yes, you do need more care. Like at a certain point, there are limitations of a family and caregivers, right? When you have to consider, my mom was petite. And so, like you could do more things physically if you had to, but there are real considerations when you get down that care continuum of them needing full-time care. And I do think that, having more opportunities and brain-oriented care facilities. But I really just wonder in this conversation of caregiving, many people with dementias, they can go on for so long, 10, 15 years. And I actually think, are we equipping people and family members with resources of how to spot caregiver burnout or how to support someone, right? Like sometimes people think that you just kind of chuckle along when someone with Alzheimer's says something funny. And that's not always the best thing, right? Like I think that there's a mismatch in terms of just like training and awareness to supports and family, because sometimes like an institutional intervention isn't what's needed right now, right? Like you want to keep them in their home or in a place that is comfortable and safe for as long as possible. And I think we need to look more broadly at the whole care ecosystem of like formal and informal. And I wonder how well we're sort of thinking about this like whole support system.
If your mom could see everything that's transpired, all the funds raised, the conversations had, the impact, the movement, what do you think she'd say?
I think that she would probably say something funny and would, hate that there's attention on her. Putting that aside, I think that, her love was research and she was curious. I think that she would be very proud that we are making an impact. and that we are contributing. I think the other thing is I think she would be grateful that we contributed her brain to science and research. We donated her brain to continue to the study of dementia. And I think that my mom would be really proud of those contributions and the discussion and awareness, despite her definitely not loving that there's attention on her. I think that she would accept it for progress and innovation. I mean, that is evident in everything that she did in her approach to research. One of the things that I think is so fascinating is my mom created, I never really realized this, and I think I now realize what she was doing. But early on, she created this care network, basically a peer-to-peer network of people with different. So she specialized in complex bowel surgeries, Crohn's disease, did just very complex, bowel cancers and stuff. And she was a general surgeon, but she created this peer-to-peer network, and she also at the same time made it where she had this huge database of people that she could use for research. When you think about that, of a lifetime of building basically a longitudinal study, creating a peer-to-peer network of people who are going through something very similar, that is an incredibly empathetic, a thing to do, to create, that's a very uncommon thing to have, but then also to have a research base on different cases and tracking surgical outcomes. I think that she would be very happy that we are doing something like this, that we are taking a stance and trying to contribute and make things better. One thing that we found so interesting in her case is how there's such a spectrum where a psychiatrist might just say you have dementia as an umbrella, but then a neurologist will say that you have mild cognitive impairment due to aphasia with, symptoms of Alzheimer's. Both are different, but both are, necessary. I might argue for specificities. We can start doing what we're doing and break stigma, but advance what we're doing. Anyways, that's a long-winded way of saying, I think, the contributions that we're making and naming things and being part of it, I think she would be proud of, hopefully.
I'm sure she is. If you had to leave our guests with one last comment or thought, what would it be?
I would say, and this is one of the ones that I would always say, is treat anyone who is going through Alzheimer's disease with kindness and compassion, and recognize that it's a harrowing disease and that they're experiencing something that is scary, and they're not going to know what's going to happen. And I think approach it with curiosity and kindness and compassion. And the same thing I would say true of caregivers, that caregivers are trying their best. They are navigating through something that they have no idea what it's going to look like. We didn't know what it was going to look like. We didn't know that we were on a roller coaster. For us, it accelerated so quickly, and knowing when to find care, when are you eligible? Everyone is just figuring it out. And I think on both sides of it is to extend kindness, care, compassion, and be curious and help people. I think one of the things I've also realized is I would probably never ask for help. And I think lots of people wouldn't ask for help. And I think sometimes we often think, well, if someone needs help, they'll ask. And that's often not the case, that people won't ask for help, but they might actually need it. And I think that's extending it to your, family, neighbors. All of it is, if you can help, ask with a suggestion. But I think that's my thought, is be curious and be kind and loving. And if you see someone who needs help, you don't assume, but they might be going through something. I don't know. It's a wild disease. You're just going day by day.
Yeah. Then there's a good thing that there's folks like you that are helping move us in the positive direction.
Thank you. You're equally doing a lot for this, right? You're convening these important conversations. You're bringing together different people and different perspectives. That's the important thing, right? We're having these conversations. So thank you to you as well.
I appreciate it. But that's what we have for today's episode, folks. I hope that it was impactful. I hope that it resonated with you, talking about endurance sports and the synergy with dementia research and the legacy of Stephanie's mom. So heartfelt thank you goes out to you, Stephanie, for sharing how love, determination, and movement can help advance your mother's legacy. Your journey on A Race with Steph shows us that even loss, we can find purpose and that every step can create a change. For those listening, if you want to learn more or get involved, search for Race with Steph. You can also follow her on Instagram on there as well. And if you're supporting someone living with dementia, know that you don't have to do it alone. Visit us at bluebellvillage.ca to find resources, stories, and personalized support to help you on your journey. Until next time, remember, you are seen, you are strong, and you are doing something that matters more than you know. Thank you.